The war was over, after years of struggle and sacrifice. The American colonies had finally won their hard-fought freedom from Great Britain, a momentous achievement that reshaped the world. For years, a king and parliament, far away in England, had dictated the rules and laws that governed their lives. Now, suddenly, there was no king. The colonies stood on their own. No single leader for all 13 states, each with its own distinct identity and interests. Each state acted like its own country, independent and self-governing. Each state had its own leaders, its own currency, and its own set of rules and regulations. Imagine a classroom suddenly left with no teacher to guide them. Some students might work together harmoniously, collaborating on projects and sharing ideas, but others would inevitably argue and disagree, creating chaos and division. That, in many ways, was America after the war. There was widespread confusion and frequent disagreement about the best path forward. People were fiercely proud to be from their own states, with strong regional identities, and not yet fully used to thinking of themselves as a unified nation of Americans. The states, protective of their own interests, didn't always trust each other. They frequently argued over land claims, trade agreements, and the fairest way to levy taxes. Without a strong central government to mediate disputes and enforce laws, the fragile new nation was in very real danger of falling apart. It was like a ship sailing in stormy seas without a captain at the helm, rudderless and vulnerable. The precious freedom they had fought so hard to win could easily be lost once again, if they didn't find a way to work together and forge a common path forward. But how could they possibly create a government that was strong enough to unite all the states effectively, but at the same time not so strong that it would ultimately take away the very freedoms they had just secured? They deeply feared creating another king, or a tyrannical central power. The central challenge was to connect these 13 disparate states, like a delicate thread carefully holding precious beads together. It needed to be strong enough to hold them together securely, but not so tight that it would break under the strain, shattering the union. This first attempt at creating a unified government would inevitably be an experiment, a bold venture into uncharted territory. It would teach them valuable lessons about what worked effectively and what didn't, shaping the future of the nation. The leaders of the new nation knew they had to act decisively and quickly. They desperately needed to create a system that all 13 states could ultimately agree on and support. This was just the very first step on what would undoubtedly be a long and arduous road to building a completely new kind of nation, unlike anything the world had ever seen before. The journey ahead would certainly not be easy, filled with challenges and obstacles at every turn, but it was undeniably the beginning of something truly extraordinary and transformative. The leaders' first plan was called the Articles of Confederation, a confederation of friends working together. The states wanted to keep their own power and independence, so the national government was made very weak on purpose. Congress was created, with delegates from each state, but it had little power. Congress could declare war, make peace, borrow money, and run a post office, but it couldn't make people pay taxes. If Congress needed money, it had to ask the states, who often said no. There was no president, because the founders feared a leader might become like a king. There was no national court system to settle disputes between states. The government was more like a club. Members could choose to follow the rules or not. The Articles were like a treaty of friendship, not a true government. The central government could help with big issues like dealing with other nations, but the states were in charge of almost everything else. Power stayed close to the people, in their own state capitals. This bold experiment soon revealed serious problems. The friendship between states wasn't strong enough to hold the nation together. The Articles showed how much the states valued their own freedom, but it also showed the dangers of a government that was too weak. The new nation needed something stronger. Change was coming. Problems quickly appeared under the Articles of Confederation. The initial optimism soon faded as the framework proved inadequate to address the burgeoning challenges facing the newly formed nation. The government was too weak to solve the country's troubles. It lacked the necessary authority and centralized power to effectively manage the nation's affairs. Money was a huge problem. The fledgling nation struggled with a chaotic financial system. The war left the nation in debt, a heavy burden that threatened to cripple its future. But Congress couldn't tax the people, only ask the states, who often refused. This lack of direct taxation power rendered the government financially impotent. The government couldn't pay soldiers, who had sacrificed so much for independence, or repay borrowed money. This damaged the nation's credit and made it difficult to secure future loans. The nation looked weak to the world. Foreign powers saw America as unstable and unreliable. States acted like separate countries, arguing over land and printing their own money. This fractured the Union and created economic instability. Trade between states was difficult, hampered by conflicting regulations and tariffs. Sometimes a dollar from one state wasn't accepted in another. This made commerce a confusing and frustrating experience. Some states taxed goods from others, hurting businesses and causing anger. These protectionist policies stifled economic growth. The idea of a united country was falling apart. The bonds of the Union were weakening under the strain of internal divisions. Then came Shays' Rebellion. This uprising exposed the deep-seated discontent simmering beneath the surface. In Massachusetts, farmers in debt, faced with crushing financial burdens, lost their farms and were jailed. This sparked outrage and fueled the rebellion. Daniel Shays led a protest, shutting down courts. This act of defiance challenged the authority of the state government. The national government was powerless, unable to intervene and restore order. No army to quell the uprising, no money to help. It was a stark illustration of the government's ineffectiveness. Massachusetts had to stop the rebellion alone. This highlighted the lack of national unity and cooperation. This scared leaders. They realized the Articles of Confederation were a failure. The weak government couldn't keep order. The very foundation of society seemed to be crumbling. The dream of a free nation was in danger. The hard-won independence was at risk of being lost. Leaders like George Washington and James Madison saw the Articles weren't working. They understood the urgent need for a stronger national government. The country was like a wagon with 13 horses, each pulling in a different direction. There was no coordination, no shared purpose. The government couldn't protect people or help the economy. It was failing in its most basic responsibilities. If nothing changed, the United States could break apart. The fragile Union was on the verge of collapse. It was time to try again. A new approach was desperately needed to save the nation. A stronger government was needed, one capable of addressing the challenges facing the country. The future of the nation depended on it. The stakes were incredibly high. The next step would change everything. It was a pivotal moment in American history. The leaders were ready to act. They were determined to find a solution. A new plan was about to begin, a plan that would reshape the nation. The fledgling nation faced significant challenges. To fix these problems, which threatened to tear the young country apart, state leaders recognized the need for decisive action. They convened in Philadelphia in 1787 for what became known as the Constitutional Convention. At first, their mission was narrowly defined: to amend and fix the Articles of Confederation, the existing framework of governance. But as they delved deeper into the issues, they soon realized that patching up the old system was insufficient. They needed a whole new government, a radical departure from the past. The delegates assembled represented the best and brightest minds in the country. They were some of the smartest and most respected men, each bringing unique experiences and perspectives to the table. Among them was George Washington, a figure of immense stature and respect. Benjamin Franklin, a renowned statesman and inventor, and James Madison, a brilliant political thinker. Given his experience and gravitas, Washington was the natural choice to lead the convention, guiding the often contentious debates. Madison, with his meticulous notes and profound understanding of political theory, brought big ideas and is rightfully called the father of the Constitution. The weight of the nation's future rested heavily on the decisions made within those walls. The future of the United States depended on what happened in that room. Recognizing the sensitivity of the task and the need for open dialogue, the delegates made a crucial decision. To speak honestly, the delegates kept their meetings secret. Windows closed, guards stationed at the doors, ensuring privacy and confidentiality. This secrecy was not about hiding from the public, but rather to let them debate freely and change their minds without fear of outside pressure or political repercussions. For 4 long months, through the sweltering heat of summer, they argued, compromised, and meticulously worked through every detail of the new government. Their ultimate goal was clear. They wanted a government strong enough to unite the nation, forging a cohesive union from disparate states. But equally important, it had to be fair enough to protect people's rights, ensuring liberty and justice for all. The work was incredibly hard, fraught with disagreements and seemingly insurmountable obstacles, and sometimes it seemed they would fail. But they kept going, driven by a shared vision and determined to create something lasting, a framework for future generations. They immersed themselves in the study of political philosophy, examining what worked in other countries and perhaps more importantly, what didn't. They engaged in passionate debates, grappling with fundamental questions of governance, how to balance power and protect freedom. The stakes were incredibly high. Failure to reach an agreement could mean the end of the new nation, plunging the states into chaos and disunion. But despite the challenges and the risks, the delegates remained steadfast, believing deeply in their mission. They were determined to build a government that would not only address the immediate problems, but also endure for generations to come, a government that would last. Their collective work, their compromises, and their vision would irrevocably shape the future of America, setting the course for the nation's destiny. The Constitution, a testament to their dedication and ingenuity, was born from their intense debates and hard-won compromises. It was a bold new plan, a radical departure from the past, designed for a bold new country, ready to embrace its potential. The eyes of the world were watching, observing this unprecedented experiment in self-governance with a mixture of hope and skepticism. The great experiment in democracy, the American experiment, was about to begin, and its success or failure would have profound implications for the future of freedom around the globe. One of the biggest arguments was between big states and small states. Big states wanted more power based on population, the Virginia Plan. Small states feared being outvoted and wanted equal power, the New Jersey Plan. The debate dragged on for weeks, threatening to tear the convention apart. Finally, Roger Sherman of Connecticut suggested a compromise. Congress would have two houses, the House of Representatives, with seats based on population, and the Senate, with 2 senators per state. This great compromise balanced the interests of both big and small states. Laws would need approval from both houses. Both sides gave up something, but both gained a voice. The compromise saved the convention. It created a system where every state mattered. The new Congress would represent both the people and the states. This solution became the foundation of American government. The delegates learned that compromise was essential. Without it, the nation could not survive. The Great Compromise showed the power of working together. It was a turning point for the new nation. Another painful argument was about slavery. Southern states wanted to count enslaved people for more representation, but not give them rights. Northern states opposed this hypocrisy. The debate was fierce and threatened to break the convention. In the end, they made the 3/5 compromise. 3 out of every 5 enslaved people would be counted for representation. The new government also agreed not to ban the international slave trade for 20 years. These compromises left a stain on the Constitution. The issue of slavery would haunt the nation for generations. The writers of the Constitution wanted a government that was strong, but not too strong. They divided power into 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. Congress, the legislative branch, makes the laws. The president, executive branch, enforces the laws and leads the military. The courts, judicial branch, interpret the laws and decide if they follow the Constitution. This system is called separation of powers. Each branch can limit the others, checks and balances. For example, the president can veto laws, but Congress can override the veto. No single branch can take over. This balance protects freedom. The founders learned from history's mistakes. They built a government designed to last. The system still works today. The Constitution's writers borrowed ideas from history and around the world. They admired Britain's 2-house parliament but replaced the king with an elected president. They studied the Roman Republic, where citizens elected representatives. They learned from Rome's fall, adding checks and balances to prevent tyranny. Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke inspired them. Government should protect life, liberty, and property. Montesquieu's idea of 3 branches shaped their plan. The Constitution was built on wisdom from many sources. It combined old ideas with new ones. The result was a unique government for a new nation. The Constitution was more than rules, it was a statement of trust. Power came from we the people, not a king. Americans were trusted to govern themselves. The Constitution was a framework for self-government. It wasn't perfect. Compromises over slavery would haunt the nation, but it was designed to change with the times. Amendments allowed it to grow and protect more rights. The journey from chaos to unity was long and hard. The Constitution laid the foundation for the country we know today. It remains a bold declaration of trust in the people.